Next, on Currents News, a vital step in evangelization in Williamsburg.
It's something many people will never see in their lifetime, and it happened right here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. A dedication of a church. I'm Emily Druby, and that's coming up.
Then, chaos in New York City's race for mayor. Officials botch the vote count, spreading doubt about the Big Apple's new ranked choice voting system. And we talked to one of the candidates who wants to be on the GOP ticket in the race for governor, Andrew Guiliani, about what it could mean for future political races in the state. Plus, the frantic search continues for more than 140 people still missing in the Florida condo collapse. People in the area aren't losing hope. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. It's big news for the Diocese of Brooklyn as one church in Williamsburg emerges from the pandemic on a high note. Parishioners are returning to Sunday Mass, to new pews and a brand new building for the first time in decades. The joyous celebration also marks a new step in evangelization for the Brooklyn neighborhood. Currents News' Emily Druby was there.
This parish is everything to Amaryllis Velez and her family.
We can't live without it.
But as parishioners of Saints Peter and Paul, for a long time, they didn't have their own church until now.
This is the beginning of something really, really beautiful in Williamsburg.
On Tuesday night, the Velez family and hundreds more packed the pews to be a part of this momentous occasion, the dedication of a new church and consecration of the altar. The sound of pure happiness could be heard, people witnessing a rare sight.
Very few people do see it because we don't have that many new churches.
In the Diocese of Brooklyn, it's been 13 years since a new church has opened. During the dedication at 288 Berry Street in Williamsburg, Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio anointed the altar and walls with chrism oil.
And we're going to put incense on it and burn it. It's a very ritual thing that comes from the Old Testament.
As the ceremony concluded, hundreds of voices rung out in joy. A moment years in the making. The original Saints Peter and Paul Church burnt down about 60 years ago. For a long time, they were housed in a temporary church, and for the past few years, they've been using the parish's other church, Epiphany. Now parishioners have a place to call their own.
This is God's work. Little by little, you can see that God is working.
A new space where they brought along memories of their old church, like these icons and this refurbished cross.
It was a very long journey and a very difficult one, but to see the excitement and the enthusiasm of the people, it's a great blessing.
As the former administrator, Monsignor Anthony Hernandez, initiated the project, Father Jason Espinal is the administrator now.
For me, it's an honor and a privilege to, in a sense, take on the baton and keep going.
The building also houses the Emmaus Center, a former opera house, a space to evangelize through the arts.
And I think this is a good step in evangelization in this particular part of Brooklyn.
This church will now be a pillar of the neighborhood and a symbol of the Diocese of Brooklyn's deep commitment to evangelization. In Williamsburg, Emily Druby, Currents News.
And Thursday on Currents News, Emily Druby will give us an exclusive tour of the Arts Center, how one of the first opera houses in Brooklyn will spread God's word through the arts in one of the city's most creative neighborhoods, Williamsburg. That's Thursday on Currents News. The New York City Board of Elections admitting a discrepancy after releasing the wrong results in the mayor's race. This as the city uses ranked choice voting for the first time. The botched count has the Democratic candidates just trying to stay patient.
It seems like it was just a mistake.
A mistake by the New York City Board of Elections that gave Democratic mayoral candidate Catherine Garcia more votes in the race, shrinking Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams' lead and eliminating Maya Wiley. The board is now recounting votes after accidentally including about 135,000 test ballots, saying in a statement, the board apologizes for the error and has taken immediate measures to ensure the most accurate, up-to-date results are reported. New York City is using a ranked choice system for the first time. That meant only New Yorkers' first choice votes were counted right away. Since one candidate did not get 50% of the first choice votes, there was no immediate winner. So the last place candidate was eliminated and their supporters' votes went to the supporters' second choice. That's where the mistake happened. The cycle will continue until there's a winner. Eric Adams released a statement Tuesday saying in part, today's mistake by the Board of Elections was unfortunate. It is critical that New Yorkers are confident in their electoral system, especially as we rank votes in a citywide election for the first time. But while he praised the board's transparency, Maya Wiley on Tuesday blasted the agency, which has a long reputation for mistakes, saying, this error by the Board of Elections is not just a failure to count votes properly today. It is the result of generations of failures that have gone unaddressed. Meanwhile, nearly 125,000 absentee ballots still have to be counted, which Garcia says she's optimistic about. But
Until they're all counted, and we are not counting our chickens before they're hatched.
the city's Board of Elections plans to continue to update the results once a week. The board is promising new results by Wednesday. In the wake of the fiasco, Eric Adams' mayoral campaign filed a lawsuit asking a judge to oversee and review the ballots if needed. The lawsuit would allow the campaign to challenge the results in court. Adams also asked other campaigns to join in as they seek a, quote, clear and trusted conclusion to the election. And later in this newscast, we check in on New York State's race for governor. I will speak to one of the candidates vying for the GOP ticket, Andrew Guiliani, about ranked choice voting and how his Republican colleagues feel about his bid. That's still ahead in this newscast. Scattered power outages are being reported in several parts of New York City. One outage left traffic lights dark and residents without air conditioning in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. Mayor Bill de Blasio is calling on residents to cut down on electric use. This as the city reports that power could remain out for much of the day. A massive search and rescue operation continues in Florida.
We're always praying for somebody to be alive.
First responders remain hopeful as they work around the clock.
Whatever they need, we are able to help.
Currents News coverage continues with news of a church that's become a safe haven for families desperate for news. 4 more bodies have been recovered at the site of the condo collapse near Miami, bringing the death toll to 16 as day 7 of the frantic search continues. The operation is now going through all hours of the night with more than 80 rescuers working 12-hour shifts. They've moved more than 300 pounds of concrete but have yet to even reach the bottom of the pile. Search and rescue teams remain hopeful.
Because I know miracles happen, and I believe in a higher power, and I believe that if somebody's going to find them, we're going to do it.
Officials are asking the families of those missing to provide DNA samples to help identify the more than 140 still unaccounted for. One woman is still holding out hope for her friend who made the move from New York City to the Surfside condo just 3 months ago. She discovered her friend of close to 40 years was missing thanks to a photo circulating from the rubble of 2 bunk beds teetering on the edge of what's left of a penthouse apartment. Randy Kay has her story.
This was the view that drew Linda March to Champlain Tower South in Surfside, Florida. The 58-year-old lawyer left New York City in March and rented a penthouse here. Penthouse number 4. This is what's left of it today. One of the most haunting images of the Surfside building collapse. With the wall sheared off and the building ripped wide open, those bunk beds in Linda's apartment are now teetering on the edge of the top floor. The pink and white flowered sheet and pillowcases remarkably still intact on the bottom bunk. For days, many have wondered if children lived in that unit. But Linda's friend tells me she rented it furnished and lived there alone. When Cindy saw the building collapse on the news, she quickly compared the address to the return address on a birthday card Linda had recently sent her.
I matched it to the building and my heart sunk. We just didn't know what to do. We felt so helpless.
Cindy called her friend. No answer. Then she sent this text, asking her friend to make contact. It's your address, and I'm worried now.
Every time I look at that picture, we try to look up diagrams and, floor plans. And what if she was in this room? What if she was in another room? There's a possibility if she slept on the couch in the living room. We were just all praying that, maybe just by the luck of God that she is in another room, that she somehow is somewhere else and not where those, the shaved off part of the building is.
So many questions amid the prayers. They'll one day hear Linda March laugh again.
She had a very infectious laugh. I mean, when you heard Linda laughing, you couldn't help but laugh and laugh with her. And just, there was so much goodness in her heart.
Randy Kay, Surfside, Florida.
The closest Catholic church to the scene is St. Joseph's Parish in Miami. We've reported that 8 families from the church are among the missing. We're joined now by Father Juan Sosa, pastor at St. Joseph's. And Father, first tell me, how are you and your parishioners coping? How have you been helping them to, keep the faith?
We're trying to use, first of all, prayer. Everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to donate things and be able to assist, especially the relatives of these families. It's being available, and whatever they need, we are able to help. Right now, we had a person called the church providing 2 apartments, very close by in another building, and so we are contacting some of those who were able to leave, of the 35 that were able to leave in case they want to use those apartments that were being located. So that's great. And Catholic Charities is present everywhere. So we're doing the best we can.
And while it's been reported that 8 families registered to your parish are missing, you say that number could actually be higher?
Well, it could be higher from the point of view if you're dealing with Catholic people. We're dealing with, for instance, one family had 4, as I said, the other one had 3. So we're doing, the 8 are the original registered residents of the family. But they may have friends. I know a couple whose son is not living there, but was spending a week with his parents that week, and a number of others. Plus, we get a lot of visitors, as you can imagine, from other parts of South America and the North, and the Catholics do come to our church. So many times every year, I'm able to recognize at least the faces of some of these visitors. I do not know whether they were there, so I can only go by the data that we have of those 8 condos.
And I know you haven't been right at the scene of the collapse, but you have gotten close. Tell me what's happening there. What did you see?
Well, I was pretty close that very morning. On my morning walk, I met parishioners who were very much by the beach, exactly about a block away, and we were able to have some pictures taken. At that time, it was a shock more than anything else. And then I began to remember the people that lived. Now, at that time, the numbers of apartments, you don't know how it goes in those buildings. So I'm not sure whether they were living in the block, the apartment complex that was up, or whether they were part of the rubble. So at that time, then we began to find out a little later about the situation.
Yeah, it's a very dangerous area right now. Father Juan Sosa, pastor at St. Joseph Catholic Church in Miami, we're praying for you.
Thank you very much.
Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Miami has been helping with relief efforts. If you'd like to help them with their continued efforts, you can donate on their website, ccadm.org. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will travel to Florida Thursday to visit the site of the collapse. The Bidens plan to spend time with the families impacted by the tragedy and will also thank first responders. In addition, the president will talk with state and local officials to ensure they have all the federal resources they need. Former President Donald Trump is visiting Texas to tour parts of the U.S.-Mexico border. It's his first trip back to the unfinished wall since he left office in January. It comes after Governor Greg Abbott vowed to continue the wall's construction in Texas. The governor's office says it's raised $656,000 in private donations. That's on top of the $250 million the state allocated as a down payment on the project. There's a lot more news headed your way.
He ties New York City history and church history together. I'm Jessica Easthope with Pierre Toussaint's Road to Sainthood and why so many say he's an example of how we should live.
And Brooklyn officially welcomes 5 priests from 5 different countries to the Diocese of Immigrants. Then, the battle for the Empire State's top job has already begun. We'll talk to Republican candidate Andrew Giuliani when we come back. It's been nearly 170 years since Pierre Toussaint passed away. The Haitian-American former slave was declared venerable in 1996 and is now on the road to sainthood. June 30th is his feast day. Jessica Easthope brings us up to date on the man who could become North America's first black saint.
A former slave, an immigrant, a hairdresser. But Venerable Pierre Toussaint considered himself first and foremost a Catholic.
Pierre Toussaint said none of those labels matter. What matters is that every person is created in the image and likeness of God.
June 30th marks 168 years since Toussaint's death, but the impact he made on New York City and church history is still relevant in his journey to sainthood.
An example of what an immigrant can do to really build up the kingdom of God.
Pierre Toussaint was born into slavery in Haiti and later was taken to New York City by his owners in 1787. While still enslaved, he began working, earning money as a hairdresser.
All the society women would seek out his services.
In those days, French women used to have extravagant hairdo, and very rapidly he obtained a large clientele.
With his money, Toussaint opened orphanages, schools, and employment offices. And instead of buying his own freedom, he purchased it for others.
He got the freedom for many other men and women.
He was worried about his family, worried about others.
Toussaint was the main financial contributor in building the Basilica of St. Patrick's Old Cathedral in Lower Manhattan. He was buried there until 1991 when he was transferred to the new St. Patrick's, the only layperson ever buried beneath the main altar. He was made venerable by St. John Paul II in 1997. If canonized, Toussaint will become the first Haitian saint.
We encourage everybody to ask God miracles in honor of Pierre Toussaint.
For Catholics living in New York City, Pierre Toussaint brings the worlds of faith and history together. In Manhattan, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
5 priests are being officially welcomed into the Diocese of Brooklyn. The men who have all been working in the diocese, some for several years, had their incardination today, only the second in the diocese since the pandemic. 2 of the priests will be assigned to churches in Brooklyn and 3 will be in Queens. Retired Auxiliary Bishop Octavio Cisneros was there to welcome the priests. He said the men, who are all Spanish and come from 5 different countries, represent a great diversity in the Diocese of Immigrants.
There are 5 men, 5 different countries, from Chile, from Ecuador, from Cuba, from Mexico, and from the Dominican Republic. How do you like that for variety? That is Brooklyn.
Now that they are officially incardinated, the priests will be part of the diocese for life and can retire here. The race to become the new governor of the state of New York has already begun. The gubernatorial election is set for November of next year, and there are a few Republicans who want to take Andrew Cuomo's job. One of the people vying to be on the GOP ticket is Andrew Giuliani. He joins us now. So, Andrew, I'm sure you're aware state Republicans conducted a straw poll this week, and you didn't receive any support among the GOP county committees. What's your reaction to that, and what's your plan to drum up support in the party?
Well, I think I'm really excited about the poll that we just did. As a matter of fact, the congressman commissioned a poll about 3 weeks ago, did not get good results from what we heard. So we commissioned our own poll. And among 587 registered Republicans, we are actually leading the field by 8 points. So to me, I look at it this way. I think that straw poll is the traditional backroom Albany deal. I want to hear from the 2.9 million registered New Yorkers, just like I'm going to want to hear from the 19.5 million New Yorkers when we take on and defeat Andrew Cuomo on November 8th of 2022.
All right. I also want to get your thoughts on ranked choice voting. The city's using it now for the mayoral race. And as we reported earlier, the Board of Elections admitted to accidentally including thousands of test ballots in their tallies. So what are your thoughts on that process?
Disastrous. I think that's the best way to describe it, right? I mean, this is absolutely absurd. I also don't understand the idea of my 4th choice for mayor. I mean, you know, I can understand a second choice maybe, but I just think they made a system that should be simple and transparent, complicated, and very murky.
All right, speaking of the New York City mayor, current mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo have been at odds over the years. How would you work with a Democratic mayor if that's the case?
Well, I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that that mayor looks and says public safety is the number one thing. Whether they're red or whether they're blue, we've seen crime spiraling out of control. And unfortunately, you just have Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo in a food fight. You know, I talk a lot about bringing New Yorkers back into New York from Florida, from Texas, from Tennessee, with two exceptions. I'm okay if Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio pay their taxes in a different state.
Cuomo has said he will seek a fourth term in 2022. New York does not have gubernatorial term limits. Do you think we should?
You know what? I do think we should, but the truth is, I'm very, very excited to take on Andrew Cuomo. You know, one of the things when I told President Trump that I was going to be seeking the nomination and ultimately taking on Cuomo, he said, you know, Giuliani Cuomo, that sounds like Ali Frazier. I can fill the garden with that fight. So I'm really, really relishing the opportunity to get Andrew Cuomo on a debate stage.
All right, and recently your father, Rudy Giuliani, was suspended from practicing law here in New York. He also got a lot of negative attention for disputing the presidential election results. So what kind of effect do you think all of that will have on your campaign?
The truth is, I proudly stand behind my father. He is a warrior for justice. He's been his entire life, and he continues to be.
All right, I have many more questions. We'll have to have you back on. Andrew Giuliani, Republican, running for New York governor. We'll chat with you again sometime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.
Still to come on Currents News, Pope Francis sends an emotional greeting to his predecessor, thanking him for 70 years of priestly service. And offering an affectionate public shout out, the pontiff says goodbye to a longtime friend. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. This week marks the 70th anniversary of retired Pope Benedict XVI's ordination as a priest. Pope Francis took a moment to congratulate the Pope Emeritus during his Angelus prayer on Tuesday.
Grazie Benedetto, caro padre e fratello. Grazie per la tua testimonianza credibile. Grazie per il tuo sguardo continuamente rivolto verso l'orizzonte di Dio. Grazie.
Benedict was ordained in 1951 and has been living in seclusion at the Vatican since his resignation in 2013. During his last general audience before summer vacation, His Holiness took the time to thank his longtime driver, who is finally retiring after spending decades working for the Vatican. Pope Francis then extended his thanks to all the laypersons who work in the Vatican and encouraged pilgrims to spend their summer strengthening their relationship with God. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.